Xin chào mọi người, hy vọng là mọi người nghe được Tâm nói ạ. Hello from Dunedin. Cảm ơn mọi người đã tham dự chương trình ngày hôm nay. Mình tên là Tâm, mình là Regional Market Manager ở Đại học Otago ở Dunedin. Hôm nay mình với lại thầy Conor rất là vinh dự được tham dự chương trình này cùng với mọi người. Mình nói một chút xíu về Đại học Otago. Trường Đại học Otago là trường đại học đầu tiên ở New Zealand. Trường có lịch sử hơn 150 năm và Otago Business School là một trường ở trong Đại học Otago. Bản thân Tâm cũng là cựu sinh viên của Đại học Otago. Tâm đến New Zealand vào năm 2018 và Tâm học Master of Commerce ở Otago Business School, major về marketing. Thì một chút xíu về Otago Business School là tụi mình có những cái chương trình ở hầu hết các ngành nghề, trong đó có những chương trình rất là mạnh, ví dụ như là MBA hoặc là tourism, và tụi mình có một cái chương trình khá là gọi là unique, duy nhất, là chương trình Entrepreneurship. Thì hôm nay mình có thầy Conor ở đây, thầy sẽ làm một cái gọi là taster class để các bạn có một chút xíu khái niệm về một lớp học Entrepreneurship ở Otago Business School. Now over to you, Conor. Thank you so much for your participation today.
I shall just share. Hello, everybody. So I'm unmuted. Thank you for the introduction. It's my great pleasure to do this taster class to talk a small bit about entrepreneurship in general, to talk a bit about the Masters of Entrepreneurship at Otago. And I guess what I'm really going to focus on is to try and give you a taster or a feeler or an introduction into the philosophy that we bring to entrepreneurship education at Otago. So at Otago, we focus on creating entrepreneurs, so not companies. And we're not really, in terms of our student education, concerned with counting how many startups or businesses or successful products we have at the end of the year. We're about giving students or providing a platform or the conditions for them to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So to teach them the process of entrepreneurship. So as this kind of famous proverb would say, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for life. So it's not about what you have at the end of your entrepreneurship education that counts. It's more about, do you understand the process that you go through to identify a problem, to identify an opportunity, whenever that time might be, for in terms of your personal life or in terms of an opportunity, in terms of timing. So can you build the skills for when the time is right to exploit an opportunity? And that's kind of a mindset and a skill set that we're really focused on. So mindset is traditionally identified or defined in relation to our attitudes or assumptions. So kind of the well-formed set of attitudes or beliefs that we hold as people. And in terms of entrepreneurship, it's incredibly important. So Carol Dweck's research points to two clearly identifiable type of mindsets, and this can crystallize or make clear to you the importance of an entrepreneurial mindset. So one type of mindset is what we would call a fixed mindset. So really, I guess what I'm asking you all to do over the course of this class is to be honest and to reflect on yourself, to reflect on your own mindset. It's not about evaluating or judging that, oh, you can't do entrepreneurship, but it's just more about understanding yourself and what areas you might need to build on. So one type of mindset is a fixed mindset. And this is where we perceive our skills and our talents as pretty fixed. They are what we are. And, this is what is most important for success. And we're really interested in with a fixed mindset in perception management. So how do people see us is really the key issue around a fixed mindset. In contrast to that, and one more oriented towards entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs, is what we call a growth mindset. So a growth mindset means that people just believe that the abilities and the skills, we can actually develop them through dedicated effort and hard work. So we can practice entrepreneurship, we can learn entrepreneurship. We don't take the skills that we have today as that's it. This is who we are for life, and having that type of rigid mindset. A growth mindset is believing that we can take what we have today and build on it, expand it, and that this is the key to lifelong success. It's just a starting point. So I asked you to think about being honest in terms of reflecting on where you're at yourself. So the questions I would have for you, and I'm not going to ask any questions at this point in time, but if you were to characterize yourself, and you were to ask yourself these questions: are you someone in it? And I mean this in terms of when you wake up in the morning and what you go about throughout your day, be it professionally, be it as a student, be it in sport or whatever extracurricular activities you do, be it in terms of when you deal with family. Do you see yourself as being someone who says to yourself, I can learn anything that I want. When I'm frustrated, I do not give up, I persevere. I love challenging myself. When I fail, I do not see it as failure, I see it as learning. Tell me that I try hard. Don't tell me that I'm brilliant. Tell me that I try hard. If you succeed, I'm not down about that. I'm not jealous about your success. I'm actually inspired by your success. And my attitude determines everything. So that's kind of what we would, or that's what we would talk about when we talk about someone having a growth mindset. Someone who has a fixed mindset is someone who believes, look, I'm either good at it or I'm not. I can do finance or I can't do finance. I can do maths or I can't do maths. I'm either good at it or I'm not. And this is it. And this is who I am for life. When I'm frustrated, screw it, I give up. I don't like being challenged by people or situations or feeling uncomfortable or dealing with uncertainty. When I fail, I take it personally. Tell me that I'm really smart. Tell me that I'm good. Don't compliment the process. Compliment my intellect. If you succeed, I feel threatened and my abilities define me. So this is a really useful table, and it's one we show to entrepreneurship students right at the start of the year, because the key point with this table is some people will look at this table and say, I'm more in the fixed mindset category, and they'll think that's who they are for life. Other people will say, no, I'm more growth oriented. But the key point with this table is it doesn't matter if you're here or here. The point is you can change. The whole point around a growth mindset and entrepreneurial mindset is that you can change and you can expand your risk-taking, how you see yourself in terms of challenging yourself, seeing failure as a learning mechanism. And, you know, a really interesting backdrop to this table and this research is that it actually, one of the experiments or research underpinning it was with young school-going children. And the experiment that was done in this situation is they had two groups of kids. And one group of kids, they were both doing puzzles. And one group of kids were told they were brilliant when they got something right. So there was significant praise for the outcome. They were told they're very smart, they're very intelligent. The other group were not told they were smart or intelligent, but they were asked questions about the process. Tell me how you did it. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what you liked about it. And what they noticed with both sets of kids is the kids who were complimented on their intellect went on to choose puzzles that were easier. And the kids that were not complimented about their intellect, but were complimented about the process, went on to choose more difficult puzzles. And we can tie these to a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. When one group of kids were really complimented on the outcome and on their intellect, What they did in the next stage, in the next decision, was they chose a puzzle that would sustain this image of themselves. Whereas the other group were not. They were willing to learn and they wanted to challenge themselves again. So this is the founding principle really of an entrepreneurial mindset. And it's something that we focus on. And it's something you should maybe later on just reflect on yourself and see, where can I grow or what do I need to change about myself in order to develop an entrepreneurial or growth mindset. So everyone has ideas, and we're going to move today from the idea of what an idea and an opportunity is and what a problem is. That's the focus of today's lecture, today's taster class, we should say. So just to prove that everyone has ideas, we're going to say maybe 30 seconds. So everyone take 30 seconds and come up with as many instances as you can or ideas for what you can use this pencil for. Okay, so maybe just stopping there just very quickly. It never ceases to amaze me in class how many ideas people can come up with. But anyone maybe in the chat want to say how many ideas or how many things they could use the pencil for? This has been used as everything from a back scratcher to a weapon to a pin in my hair. Nice, yes. Sell. Okay, you could sell it for sure, yes. Anyone else? To hit someone, yes. A weapon. Drawing, writing, yes. Sketching, yep. Yep. Okay, so fundamentally, this is a pencil, and as you all correctly point out, it has make a hole in the paper. Yeah, it has an obvious use, but it actually can be turned into a range of things. Okay, so I think the record I had in class in 30 seconds was someone came up with 19 different variations on how this pencil could be used. But this is just really to highlight the idea that everyone can come up with ideas, but that's not what we're interested, in today. We're interested not so much in ideas, because Bill Aulet, who is someone that I very much support and use in the entrepreneurial teaching, Bill Aulet from MIT School of Entrepreneurship, he makes the point that the most overrated or exaggeratedly important thing in entrepreneurship is the idea. The idea is not the most important thing. And let's bring it back to the growth and the fixed mindset. I can't do entrepreneurship because I don't have an idea. That's fixed mindset. And after all, the idea is not the most important thing. The team, so the relationships you form, the execution of a plan, the market analysis, the timing, all these things are actually proven to be more important than the idea. So this is probably the first or maybe the second lesson today, outside of the growth and the fixed mindset, is do not be turned off by entrepreneurship or worried you cannot be an entrepreneur because you don't think you have an idea right now. That's not what is important. And in any event, while ideas are easier to come up with, it is far more difficult and complex to identify problems worth solving. So we can all have ideas, but are the ideas relevant to problems worth solving? And this is what the whole taster class today is going to be based around. For many businesses, many entrepreneurs will fail, not because they're slackers or they haven't worked hard enough. It's because there was no real opportunity to begin with. So the idea was not exploiting an opportunity or a problem. Take these two quotes to really reinforce this point, okay? Einstein once said, if I had 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes solving it. And over again in university, And in real life, with real businesses, you will see people focus on the solution too early. I have a brilliant innovation. I have a brilliant technological solution, but the problem is never defined so well. Another quote is, I do not want to fall in love with your product or service. I want you to fall in love with my problem. So that idea of a business falling in love with your problem. So they're completely in line and in tune with what your pain points are. If they're intimately in love with your problem, they're going to address that problem better. They're going to deliver more value to you. So this is the key thing around entrepreneurship and ideation and problems. So misdefining the problem, so not defining it well or not spending enough time on the problem, is the biggest barrier to making good decisions with entrepreneurship, particularly at the early stage. And I'm really emphasizing this, everyone, okay? So what I really want to emphasize today, and I'm going to come right back to this at the end of the class, is you have to focus on the problem before you focus on the solution. We had an entrepreneur teaching a paper in our master's program last week, and I sat in on the pitches at the end of the week. And successful entrepreneur, the pitches that they were doing, that the students were not allowed in any way to talk about the solution. It was a full pitch on a problem. Okay, so really analyzing the problem and why it's a problem worth solving. But this is where I'm going to ask you to do some work. So I'm just conscious of time, okay? So this is from teachingentrpreneurship.org. So the reference is down here. I just want to claim that this is not my teaching exercise, but it's one I think is perfect for getting people just to step outside their comfort zone and to have some fun, okay? So here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to get to your purpose. This is called the Pilot Your Purpose exercise. And the key point in this kind of framework is that your purpose is at the intersection of your interests. What are you interested in? What your skills are, and where in the world you want to kind of create impact. So how are we going to get there? So I'm going to try and do this quite concisely. So on your computers or on pens and papers, I'm going to frame some questions, and I want you just really rapid fire to write down some things. This will be easy because it's about you. No one can do this better than you can. So first up, my friend, so we're going to talk about interests here. So I want you to say this to yourself. My friends say I always talk about creating, building, or doing what? What do your friends always tell you that you're doing? What do your friends always say? God, you're doing that again. You're doing that again. What do your friends say? Second question is, if you never had to worry about money or a job or looking after a family or a house or a mortgage, if you never had to, what would you do? So first question, my friends say, I'm always talking about whatever. What are you always talking about? If you never had to worry about money, what would you do? Lastly, before you go to bed or when you get up in the morning and you're on YouTube, or you're on your train or you're commuting to work, whatever it might be, and you're on YouTube or social media, what do you end up just always focusing on? So those three things, okay? Jot down just a couple of things. Now that's you getting intimately aware of your interests. Let's move on. We're going to talk about your skills now. Okay, your friends might say that you're interested in, I don't know, football. But what do your friends say you're very good at? Do they say you're very creative? Do they say that you're good at finance? Do they say you're really a calm person? What do your friends say you're good at? Not what do they say you're always doing? What do people compliment you on? What are you interested at getting better at? And lastly, what do you think you're quite good at? Don't be humble here. What do you think you're good at? So this is different to interests. Here we're talking about skills. Your friends say you're good at, you're interested in getting better at. So if you had more time, you'd be interested in getting better at what? And then lastly, what are you honestly about? What do you think you're quite good at, if you do say so yourself? Okay, now we're going to combine those things. So the first thing is, from the first page, just jot down, reflecting on your interests, okay, about what your friends say you're always talking about, or what you always get hung up on. Just what do you think you're most excited about in terms of your interests? And from the last page, in terms of what your friends say you're good at, or what you're interested at getting better at, just what do you think some of your key skills are? So your interests and your skills actually amount to your passions. So it's a very simple equation. So the summary from the first sheet and the summary from the second sheet equal your passion. So just jot down some passions that you might have. Now we're nearly there with this one. So let's just move it on. It's the second last stage. Now we want to talk about our impact, okay? Because maybe, it's not always about money for us. So in terms of impact, what is it that you would like to do in the world? So what groups of people or what section of society would you like to help? What really gets you excited? In 10 years' time, who would you like? Someone could talk about the impact you had on the world. For what groups of people would that be? What are the local problems around you that you would be interested in getting involved in and solving? And globally, are there some big issues that you would like to be involved in? So this is where we want to create an impact for the world. Again, we're trying to be honest with ourselves here. We're trying to isolate our skills, our interests, and where we can create impact to find our purpose. So bringing this all together, okay? Reflect on your passions and reflect on your impact. And just everybody, just please jot down. I'm going to give everyone maybe 60 seconds, so a minute here. I want people to reflect on their passions, so where you want to make a difference in the world. And your impact. Sorry, your impact, that's where you want to create a difference in the world, and your passions, which come from your skills and interests. So I want you to reflect on those two things and just write down a mission statement for yourself. So what is your purpose? Okay, what do you see as your purpose? Believe it or not, this is the easy bit. The reason this is easy is because no one can argue with you on this. This is about you. And of course, you can listen to me here now for these 10, 15 minutes, and you can say, what is Conor saying? But I do recommend that maybe when you feel less pressure, that you revisit these slides and you do this properly yourself. Okay, it can be quite powerful to do this yourself. But if you have done this now, write down a purpose statement. So I see my purpose as, so you do some examples down here. So in each stage, they've given some examples. So based on skills and interests and passion and impact, you see some purpose statements here. One is to teach young, vulnerable populations to cook healthy foods. That's one. Another might be to create a better school system for people of color. That's another. Okay, so these are purpose statements. Now, believe it or not, what I'm going to ask you to do in 2 minutes is, and it does not have to be brilliant. It does not have to be viable even. No one is going to judge you. I want to come right back to the growth mindset. Based on your purpose, please think of a business idea. Any business idea. Does anyone want to share an idea that they have? Okay, so we don't have any ideas. So I'm just trying to bring you through the process of ideas to a, okay, we have a hand up there. Yeah, we have some hands, sorry. I'm not administering this, so can we hear?
Yep, sure. Me?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Hello?
So I am thinking about selling bread with print the celebrity face on it because I want to be a baker.
Nice.
And I love baking. Yeah. And I think something related to your idol will attract more people.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that. I have a question here about purpose is different from interest. So purpose is far deeper than our interests. Okay. So purpose is, so we might be interested in a range of things, but purpose can be, it brings into play the impact we want to have on the world. So I remember I actually worked for someone, and he used to always say the question that was quite inspiring. He said, imagine the world with me or imagine the world without me. Okay, so I could be interested in something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it resonates with my deeper sense of purpose about how I want to create an impact in the world. Okay, so so purpose is just a small bit deeper, or considerably deeper. But just to move this on, and this is where it really gets important. So if you all have a new venture idea related to your purpose, what I would like you to do now, to come right full circle back to what we did at the start of the class, is I would like you to turn it on its head and say, what is the problem underpinning this idea? Remember, we have said everyone can have ideas, but lots of ideas won't succeed unless they're addressing a problem. So again, you can jot down, you can go through this process again yourself later. So this is a good structure for making a distinction between an idea and a problem worth solving. I'm going to say that again, an idea and a problem worth solving. Because the idea is often oriented around a solution, but we need to focus on the problem. So what I'm going to show you next is probably one of the best things I've come across in terms of identifying a problem. Again, it comes from Bill Olet and some of his teaching staff in terms of their entrepreneurship, but this is called a problem statement. And what they get their students to work through is to completely define the problem. The thing about this statement, and I'm going to go through a worked example soon, is that nowhere on this canvas do you see any mention of a solution. Absolutely nowhere. If you fill out this form properly in relation to your business idea, what you're doing is drilling in deeper to the problem, clarifying the problem. You're not talking about the solution. So if you just please understand what I'm saying there. We're not talking about the solution. So that last idea, thank you very much for that. But if you were to problematize that, if we can say that, if you were not to say what the solution would be, but how this is a problem. So you will see you will see the reference for this down here where they talk through an example of this. And the example, what they base it on is, it was this guy who is teaching, or it was funding, sorry, I'm not too sure if it was in a teaching scenario or if it was in a venture capital type scenario, but someone came to him and said, people have a huge problem with traffic in Sao Paulo. We are going to build the leading ride-sharing app for them. People have a huge problem with traffic in Sao Paulo. We're going to build the leading ride-sharing app for them. Can anyone tell me what they see as wrong with this? Anyone, what if you were looking at this statement based on everything that we've said, what do people think is wrong with this statement?
Hi.
The old might not adapt this. Yeah, thank you. Very good.
Right.
Yes, we have someone coming in there. Is there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
First, I want to identify the huge problem. What is that problem? Because the problem mentioned here is not really clearly to me.
Excellent.
People have a huge problem, but what is it?
Excellent. Perfect. You're bang on. And we have this, the problem is confused. We have someone else says not solving the problem seems to create more problems. Yes, thank you. You're clearly listening. Does anyone else want to say anything?
Oh, yes. I also think that a huge problem, like it's not specific. We don't know that people in Sao Paulo, what do they need? Yeah.
Thank you. 100%. So what this statement is doing is it's not defining the problem. It's saying there's a problem. It's also saying people. What people? Okay, we don't know anything about the people. Who? We need to break down the potential customer. Okay, what do they look like? Other issue with this statement is the second part of the statement. This bit. Oh, sorry. We're going to build the leading ride-sharing app for them. They're jumping straight to the solution, right? They haven't defined the problem because we don't really know what the huge problem is. Thank you for confirming that. We don't really know who the customer is or who the target market is. And we're jumping to a solution before we actually know what the problem is. And we should never talk about the solution until we know what the problem is. So this framework that I've given you here is excellent for this. So if you ever have a business idea or you think you have an idea, someone comes to you with an idea, let them fill out this canvas. And what you're asking them to do, sorry, just check time, is you're asking them to say, in this context, this particular customer has this problem. This makes them feel emotionally, maybe pissed off or angry or frustrated. It impacts them because it costs them $10 a day or 2 hours a day or whatever it might be. How are you going to measure it? And then what you want to say is, they have some of these options at the minute, but they are suboptimal. They're not good enough. So again, in this context, this customer has this problem. It makes them feel bad. It costs them money or time. They have alternatives, but those alternatives are not ideal. And this was the problem statement. And in working through this, what you find is, now, compared to this statement here, which is more compelling? People have a huge problem with traffic in Sao Paulo. We're going to build a leading ride-sharing app. How do we know a new ride-sharing app is needed? Compared to this, every single working day in the morning and evenings for an average of 2 hours, 3 hours per day. So this is the context. Young men aged 25 to 35 with middle low income who live in suburban Sao Paulo and work in the city center, in a corporate city center. What's their problem? Well, they lose time in traffic instead of doing something more valuable. This makes them feel frustrated and bored. They actually lose, on average, 40 hours every month. So now we're measuring it. So at the minute, they could sign up for Uber as an Uber driver and accept rides only when coming to or from work. But this is not ideal because driving for Uber requires more time waiting for a ride. So they're waiting for a ride, and the trip's origin and destination might not work with our travel plans. So now, We have a much clearer. So now if someone comes to you and says, I'm going to build an app because people have heavy traffic in St. Paulo. You don't understand the problem, you don't understand who, you don't understand what the competition is. However, if you work through it like this, and this is not easy, not easy to do, but it shouldn't be. But the better you do this, the more you clarify the problem. So now you have, in this context, these particular customers. So you want a specific customer in terms of age range, sex, in terms of income. You want to develop a real identification of the persona. You want to say what the problem is, not a huge problem. That's not clear enough. It makes them frustrated. So basically what we're saying is people are, spending time in traffic and they're bored, they're frustrated, they're losing time, they're not making money, they're trying to be Uber drivers, but that actually isn't good enough. And from there, if you read this article, from there you'll see they went on to develop a much more specific ride-sharing app to Uber that allowed people to bring people to and from their location in line with their working hours. Okay, so I'm not going, just from time, I'm not going to get you to work through that, but you would see that in terms of my takeaways from today is to have a business, you need a paying customer. You do not have a business unless you have a customer paying. For a customer to pay, you need to fall in love with their problem. You need to solve the problem they have. So in entrepreneurship, we focus on the problem, not the solution, which is quite interesting, isn't it? Because I bet a lot of you think that entrepreneurship is about building new businesses and new ventures, etc. Whereas in the early days, you have to become obsessive about the problem. Okay, so that is what I wanted to say. Tam, should I leave it there? Or will I move on to talk slightly about the Masters in Entrepreneurship? Or is there questions? Or I can't hear, sorry. I can't hear, Tam.
Okay, thank you. There was a student raising their hand earlier, so maybe she want to say something.
Oh yeah, no problem. I just don't see everyone, sorry, because there's so many people.
It's all right. I think Gwen want to ask you a question or something.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, I see. Sorry. Yes. Hello.
Excuse me, it's me. Also, sorry for interrupt you, but I have a question. Like, people consider the problem from their point of view, right? So with the same situation, the different person will have a different problem. So how can we deal with that situation? Like,
so say that again. I think that, so say that again. Sorry. So different people would see a problem in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah. So the different people will have different problems. So how can we know what is their problem?
Well, you can't focus on all different people or all problems. You focus on what we talk about is you build your business from the customer back. Okay, you build your business from the customer back, and you just focus on you will not succeed, or you will not be successful if you claim to be, if you try and be all things to all people, you will be nothing to anybody. Okay, you will try to do too much. So what you actually need to do is to identify a problem associated with a particular persona. When I say a persona, like what we do, what we talk about is we literally name the customer. We will say Mary, female, age 20 to 30, started her job, etc. So what we do is we're really precise about the customer, because there will be many Marys. There will be lots of people exactly like her who have the same problem. And we build a business around that problem. And once we deal with that problem and that customer, we can start to solve it for other people as well. But you are right that many people have different problems and many people have different perspectives on problems. But as an entrepreneur, you need to choose what you're focusing on. You can't deviate. You can't be distracted by it. So actually, what Bill Aulet says, and I think this is quite interesting, an entrepreneur will never fail from being too focused. So you cannot, you might fail for a lot of reasons, but a reason you won't fail is by being too focused. Okay, so hopefully that kind of addressed that point. There's another question.
Oh yes, I wonder if like how can we identify if there's a problem or not? Because like I think it's kind of difficult to know if there's a problem until we felt it, until we receive like a consequence. Yeah. So how can we identify it before we fail?
How can you, well, how can you identify, again, it actually comes back to it. So it comes back to interacting with the market as early as you can, because what you think might be a problem may not actually be a problem whatsoever. So you actually have to collect data on what you think the problem is. So we have a range of, there's a range of ways in which you can identify potential problems by I don't want to get too complex now, but in terms of use cases, yeah, I don't know how to get, I don't want to get too complicated, but what I like about the questions is you are all oriented on a problem, okay? And that's right, none of you are talking about a solution, but problems are only identified from, be it your experience, it can be like from your own personal experience, it can be from what you observe, it can be from what you research. But the key thing is you are completely right. The problem that you think might exist when you go and talk to who you think the customer is might not in fact be the problem at all. It might be something different. So we would never say, or it would never be correct to say that once you identify the problem, you then go and start to try and build your business or build a solution around it. You actually have to go and do a lot of hard work and research around the problem to make sure that it is a problem. Because as you say, you might see it as a problem, but they don't. Okay, it might be something else. Okay, good question though. That's good. That's interesting. Are we okay? Is that the there's some chats there, is there? Oh, that's it. Perfect. So yeah, so if I was to say in terms of, before I just talk about, if I was to give you two takeaways today, I would say be aware of what a fixed mindset is and a growth mindset. I found that personally, I find that quite powerful in terms of a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So don't, if you see yourself as having a more of a fixed mindset, don't be disappointed. See it as an opportunity to change towards a more growth-oriented mindset. Okay? It's very, very important. The skills and abilities you have now are only the starting point. You can build on those. That's the first thing. The second point I wanted to take away from today is that everyone has ideas, but not everyone has ideas that are related to problems worth solving. When you have an idea, try and articulate it as a problem. Use the problem canvas to try and articulate it. So in this stage, what do people think the next stage is? So if we're teaching in Otago to entrepreneurship, what do people think the next stage is to this? So say a student comes with this canvas to me or to someone else. What do you think the next stage is? The next stage we would tell the student or the entrepreneur to go out and to talk to young men aged 25 and 35, to do a survey or to go and interview them or to do some secondary research observation on commuting. Because it's only through that primary research that they become to learn the problem better and better and better and better and better. It's not like you just articulate this problem here and then move on. You must actually go and talk to the customer, because it might be that they are not the customer. Okay, so you're always talking to the customer. You build your business from the customer back. You build the business from the customer's problem back. Okay. Yes, so what challenges did you have to overcome at the beginning of your journey, of my journey? Is this, I'm just a bit unclear on this message?
I think the question is about the question is about the beginning of the entrepreneurship journey. You know, like I think they are talking about startup. Is that Joanne? Do you want to clarify your question?
Or is it maybe for me as an individual? What challenge I guess I'm an academic lecturer. And if I'm to think about that, I would have had challenges in terms of you'd have doubts about yourself about, can you do the research? Can you teach? Can you walk into classrooms with hundreds of people? Can you supervise all these students? So if you had a fixed mindset, you might go, I can't do that. Okay, I can't do that. But with a growth mindset, you learn and you train and you develop your experience and your skills over and over again. You know, I wasn't always an entrepreneurship scholar or lecturer. I was more in innovation and strategy. So the opportunity to take over the Master of Entrepreneurship was one in which I had to go and learn a whole new area. So if you were talking to me 3 or 4 years ago, even though I work for an entrepreneur, in terms of teaching it, I had to learn a whole new skill set. So these are challenges I had to overcome. It's everyone needs a growth mindset to open up new opportunities and to develop their career. So sometimes the entrepreneur can lead us to a dead end. Sometimes it's just we're facing the well, that's a really good question. How do we know when to stop? Now there's the $1 million question. That really just comes from your research, because we can't tell people to fail on the first sense of negative feedback, okay? Because that wouldn't really demonstrate much persistence in terms of a growth mindset. So that can only just come from experience and research and, you know, taking the knockbacks and maybe listening to other people along the way. It might come from when you go to develop your business model and you find that some of the core assumptions underpinning your business model prove false. That might be a stage where you have to pull the handbrake up and start to think about things differently. You know, when we do the Master of Entrepreneurship, some people go through a whole new venture project. They spend 4 months researching it. And at the end of the project, after collecting all this data and doing all this work, they write up their conclusion to say, you know something, it didn't work. It's not viable. I need to hold up my hand, but I have learned all this extra stuff and I'm going to pivot in a different direction. Okay. So it's not so much really about, when do we give up? It's more about listening to the customer, listening to the market and knowing how do you adapt and change what you thought was the way you were doing it and making it maybe more attractive. So I would say it's less about giving up and knowing more about how to change, how to adapt. But again, very good question. I think that's maybe if I just, before there's any questions, I just want to say what our Entrepreneurship Masters is about, if I have maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So at Otago, we have a new Bachelors of Entrepreneurship, which is just starting next year. And the Bachelors of Entrepreneurship is an undergraduate degree. So you will do a degree in 3 or 4 years study. And what they're saying is with the key offering with the Bachelors of Entrepreneurship is you do 8 papers in the business school, so 6 prerequisites and 2 electives. And then you can choose papers from anywhere else in the university to complete your degree. So that's the Bachelors of Entrepreneurship. The Masters of Entrepreneurship is what I am involved in. The Masters of Entrepreneurship is a 1-year program. Sorry, it's a 15-month program, but it's 1 year of classes. And what we would say is, who's the target market for the Master of Entrepreneurship? I would be firmly of the opinion that you don't necessarily, that if you're a non-business graduate, so if you're a student who's at university and you have never studied business, but you feel nervous or you feel that you need to learn business quickly, Master of Entrepreneurship can be a great and efficient way to learn about business skills. You might be a business graduate who wants to develop more your entrepreneurial skills and learning. You might be someone, what we see the last few years is this is probably the greatest area. It's people who have gone out working for a few years and they just have that itch. They're not particularly happy about what they're working in. They don't like their industry. They don't really want to be working for a boss, doing the same thing. They want to become more self-sufficient. So we see a lot of people who step out of their career after a couple of years and do the Master of Entrepreneurship. And of course, and I put this last, you might have a business idea. So when I came into the Masters of Entrepreneurship, I thought this is what it was all about. It's about people who have an idea and want to start a business. That's actually incorrect. It's more the mindset and learning the process of new business creation. We have 2 parts, part A and part B. So in the first year, you will do 7 papers from February to November. So 7 papers, February to November. The really unique thing about the Master of Entrepreneurship is that the papers are delivered in 1-week blocks. So it's 9 to 5 each day. So for 1 week, 9 to 5, you do class like a job, and then you finish the paper. And you do that 7 times throughout the year. Then you have a break at Christmas, and you come back and do a new venture project where you're partnered with a mentor, and you work through the disciplined entrepreneurship methodology to start a business. These are some of the things that you will learn. These are the papers we cover. So I teach the first one in terms of mindset, introduction to entrepreneurship. You do feasibility analysis, finance, digital marketing and sales, strategy. And then we have some electives around sustainability, technology, and tourism. So these are the 7 papers. You do these 5 and you pick 2 out of these 3. And then after Christmas, you come back and you do a project where hopefully you start a new business. But what we ask you to do in this project is to apply all the skills you've learned here into a project and to develop an investment-ready document around a business idea. If you want to apply for the Masters in Entrepreneurship, we need to see transcripts, a CV, and the most important thing, I cannot overestimate this, is a letter of intent. So why do you think you should do the Masters of Entrepreneurship? What do you want to get out of it? Often we will get a letter of intent and we will go, interesting, but this student actually wants to do international strategy, or they're more interested in accounting, and we will tell them to go and do a different master's. It's the people who really can write a letter around what it is that, you know, coming back to this passion and purpose, that how they want to create a difference in the world and how they need to learn the skills to do this. If that is you, then, you know, and you have the transcript, or you have the marks, the grades, then you have a very good opportunity of getting into the Masters of Entrepreneurship. So it's a wonderful program, a year of papers, a break, and then a 3 to 4 month new venture project. I think that is, so 7 papers equals 7 subjects, correct? Sorry, that's, do we have scholarships? Yes, we do, yeah. Anything else, please leave. Yeah.
Thank you, Conor. Do you want to share a bit about the startup culture in Dunedin or Audacious? If you want
to.
Do you want to say something about? Do you want to say something about the startup culture in Dunedin, including Audacious?
Yes. Okay, so in Dunedin, so Dunedin is a pretty small town, a pretty small city. So there's a very vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem here, incredibly vibrant. And everyone who works in this space knows each other. So I would say if you are interested in entrepreneurship in Dunedin and in Otago, there are 3 pillars in terms of university. There is the Bachelors that is coming. There is the Masters, which is postgraduate. But then outside of the classroom, we have this wonderful extracurricular student enterprise competition called Audacious, which is run minimum twice, if not 3 times a year. And this is free, and you get 7 weeks of mentorship where you learn about the basics of entrepreneurship. So you have different people come in to give 2-hour taster classes like this on how to start a business or how to validate a business idea. And then you pitch, and the top finalists get to present at this big business school awards night, where local businesses from town offer up some incredibly valuable prizes, such as website design, mentorship, whatever it might be. And the Audacious as a student competition gets huge visibility. It gets into the local newspaper in terms of what people are doing. And there has been recently there has been considerable success of some of the students who have just done Audacious. So you don't even necessarily need to be doing the Bachelors or the Masters to benefit from Audacious. So just want to stress that no matter what you're studying, every student can dip their toe into entrepreneurship and learn the basics of starting a new business from the excellent people at Startup Dunedin.
Thank you so much, Conor, and thank you so much, ENZ and ISB team. I think it's an hour.
And I just see that last question there. I just said, what do you think about the advantages and disadvantages of coming up with an idea and starting a business with them? I think that is fine for now. Obviously there is the perils of people say, don't go into business with family and friends. Yes, that is true. That is true. And there's lots of stories for that. However, on the other side, particularly at the startup phase or when you're just trying out with entrepreneurship, I don't want to name, but one of the startups from Dunedin that has had huge success, it's 2 best friends in Dunedin here they have a business from Audacious, so you can go look it up if you want. They're going very well. If you look at Allbirds, I'm not sure if many of you have seen the story around Allbirds, the shoe company, the sustainable shoe company that just went public 2 weeks ago, valued at over 5 billion now. There's 2 friends. So there's a global company that are valued at over 5 billion, and it's two friends working together. So there are pros and cons, but I wouldn't say there is a right answer.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. Phương Nguyen has already asked this, but I want to ask that how can we conduct a good market research to define our problems?
How can
we conduct a research market?
Yeah. So how can you conduct a market research? Well, I wouldn't be doing at the early stage. So before you go doing kind of testing at the later stage. So obviously you want to get to a stage where you're developing a minimum viable product or a prototype that you can put in front of a customer, or you can do some A/B testing. So you want to get to there. Okay. But at the start of the trip, at the start of the journey, honestly, all that's required is desk-based research and, most importantly, talking to the customer. So surveys, you can be doing surveys online. You can be doing surveys through Facebook. What a lot of students that we have, they find there's so many special interest groups on Facebook or on social media that are specific to a business idea that you can join these groups or join these forums and put a survey up online, and you can get incredible feedback that way. or you can go and do interviews, focus groups, and you can tease out your problem. Okay, so that's a really good question. But what I would make a distinction between interviews and surveys at the outset, standing on the street, talking to people, you know, really all of that is valuable. And then you come back and you learn from it, iterate, and you go and collect more data, and you go and collect more data all the time until you actually can develop an MVP and try and get more concrete feedback from that. But what you do not want to do is you do not want to sit at your desk, build a business plan, build a prototype, and then go to a customer, and then the customer says, I didn't even have that problem. Okay, so you need to validate the problem and tease out what you think the problem is, what they think the problem is very early, and develop it and develop it and develop it.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for your answers. But I have another questions. Like sometimes our customers seem to not realize that there is a problem. While we may know that the problems can be occur, but our customer may not. Maybe they only realize that problem in the later process. They realize some symptoms in the later process. So like, how can the problem can be actually get noticed by our customer? Thank you.
Well, that's an interesting question, but I know that there are some exceptions whereby, you know, where it might be true that that you have to emphasize or draw the customer's attention to the problem. But I would say that is very much the exception to the rule. What you want to avoid is the solution bias. And what the solution bias is what you're saying is the problem is the customer doesn't like my solution. So imagine if that's what you're saying. The problem is the customer doesn't like my solution. That tells you something. You have that's called a solution bias. So what I want to say is, yes, there may be instances where you can draw the customer attention to a problem they didn't know they had, but I would be very cautious about that approach. You must listen to the customer and how they are articulating the problem. Okay, that is the way I approach it. If the customer is telling me they don't have a problem in that area, I'm not going to spend a lot of time persuading them that they do. I think that's quite dangerous, but it's an interesting comment. Yeah.
You have time for some questions in the chat box, or?
I can. It's probably easier to. So I see two more here. It's like is it bad? Some people just don't like to. Like, is it bad that some people just don't like to start up, like just want to work for it? Oh, no, that's not bad. So I prefer to answer the questions here, Tam, if that's okay. Is it bad that some people, that is not, it is absolutely not bad if you don't want to be an entrepreneur and you prefer to work for somebody else. Absolutely not. Some people are more oriented towards entrepreneurship. Other people prefer to work in an organization. What I would say is entrepreneurship can also offer a bridge into both worlds. What we find with some of our students is they're actually getting jobs in businesses as entrepreneurially minded people, so they can bring some creative thinking to large organizations rather than starting up themselves. So it is not bad if you don't want to be an entrepreneur. I'm working for an organization, but I'm doing stuff related to entrepreneurship in this organization. So certainly it's not bad. The second thing is we need to define the problem and see if our idea solved the problem. So you build your solution. So we need to define the problem. Correct. That's 100% correct. The next bit isn't really correct because you're seeing if our idea solves the problem. Not necessarily. What you do is you try and address the problem. Your solution comes from the problem. So it's the cart and the horse, okay? The solution has to come from the problem. Okay. How is this related to creating a problem instead of solution philosophy? So I don't fully understand the second bit. So really what what you're trying to do is you're trying to draw the customer's attention to the problem, and how you can draw the customer's attention to the problem is what we call the quantifiable impact of your value proposition. So in that San Paulo example, what they could break it down to is, do you know you are losing 40 hours a month? Do you know your commute to work is emotionally making you frustrated and annoyed? Okay, so you're selling the problem before you sell the solution. Okay, that's quite important. The solution, so again, I encourage you all to read that link that I put up, because it talks through how their original idea pivoted from what they thought it would be. So sure, at some point in time, you get to talk about the solution, but in this class, we're talking about the early stages of entrepreneurship, and it's all about focusing on the problem and identifying it as a problem worth solving. So falling in love with the customer's problem. Yes, I think that's it. I hope you all got something from that. I might see you in New Zealand sometime. Who knows? Studying entrepreneurship. Yes, Tam, is that okay? I hope I didn't deviate too much from what was required.
Yes, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Conor. I mean, you know, like being a business student, that I learned a lot today as well, and I did take note for myself. And I hope the students here enjoy the class. I do hope so, because based on the interaction so far, I think people have insightful questions. And thank you once again.
Yeah. I'm very impressed with the insightful questions, actually, and I'm very impressed that they've all been focused on the problem. Like, they're all problem oriented. So yeah, that gives me good pleasure. Yes.
Thank you everyone. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều ạ. Chắc là mình kết thúc ở đây. It's quite late here in Dunedin. Have a great evening, Conor. And
yes, and you too. And
everyone.
good luck to everyone. Bye.
See you.